Hello, everyone. I'm Nick Desai. I'm the chairman of a company called Juice Wireless. And today's panel, we're going to talk about personalizing the mobile phone experience, social media on the mobile handset, the importance of it, the issues with it, where, why it should be there. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my company, but first I'd like to introduce my outstanding panel of people who are much smarter than me. We have Brett Crosley, who's a vice president of sales and marketing from Packet Video. David Ratner, who is a vice president of digital identity and messaging from OpenWave Systems. Atakan Chetansoy, who is a vice president of business products from MyStrands. Ed Fowler, who is the director of business development for the Americas, EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and Australia from Gesture Tech, and Michael Papish, who is the president and CEO of Media Unbound. So, welcome everyone, and thanks for attending. We have a small group this afternoon, so if everyone wants to move up and get up close and personal, you're more than welcome to, or just stay where you are. But we're going to throw things from the back of the room, so if you're in front, it'll be better. So, what is it that we're here to talk about? Why is this important? Why is it that you should care? Social media is this thing that has burst upon the scenes really in the last couple of years, that in the sense that people are talking about it. The MySpace generation, MySpace, Friendster, bloggers, Zango, all of these products have, taken the internet by storm in terms of defining a new kind of usage for IP-based services. And in doing so, the question is, do these things belong on the phone? And if so, in what format and how, and what technologies are going to make that happen? This whole event is called Building Blocks. So what are the building blocks and the enabling systems and that are going to make it happen, and what are the kinds of controls that you need to make it happen successfully without having some of the problems that we hear about every day that are happening on the internet in the social media arena? So first of all, what I want to do is start out by asking the question, does social media belong on the phone? Okay, user-generated content, blogging, social networking, connecting with other people, community, all these words that you hear about, does it belong on the phone? Okay, and I'm going to tell you my opinion on this, and then we'll let each of the panelists talk about this. And the fundamental precept that we have at Juice Wireless, and we develop a mobile social media product called the Juicecaster, is that not only does social media belong on the phone, it belongs on the phone more than it belongs anyplace else. Because social media is a new kind of communication, and the cell phone is a communication device. Okay, social media, when I call somebody and say, hey, oh my God, I just saw this, or I take a video of it from my phone and share it with them on their phone right away, there's both just forms of communication, okay? So when you have a new communication medium, the cell phone, and a new kind of communication, social media, the two things fit hand in glove, okay? That's fundamentally the construct of what we're here to talk to you about today. So I'll turn it over to Brett to address the same question, and then we'll just go down the line.
Right, so I agree completely that the phone is first and foremost a connected device, and if we don't take advantage of the connectivity on the phone, then that just would seem to be the biggest mistake that anyone could make. The focus of our company with Packet Video is music and video services on the phone, and what really separates the phone from, say, an iPod, besides the fact that there are so many more phones than there are MP3 players, etc. But what really separates the phone is that it is connected, it's always on. You think about it as a personal communication device. The thing that we see people doing more on a phone than anything else besides talking on it, and it may be soon that it's more than talking on it, is text messaging. I watch as my younger brother-in-law sits here and texts faster than I can type, and he's texting on a just a 10 key pad, and it's much quicker than I can type out things on a Treo or a BlackBerry, and does it all the time effortlessly without even thinking about it. And so I think that the social networking side of things will be a natural extension of the fact that young people are already using the phones in that way. And so, as you sort of glom on and move past the basic text messaging, then the social networking is going to kind of grow out of that. The other place we see it happening is that it'll become more integrated into the other applications on the phone, whether those are games or media-related, music, video, etc.
Great. David?
Thanks. So OpenWave, for people who don't know, sells software into both the handset manufacturers as well as the landline and mobile operators. So we kind of have a unique view, handset to network, of what's going on in the world. And one of the key things that we see is that the real key is that understanding the subscriber's identity. I agree that the phone is a communication device. I agree that new forms of social media do belong on the phone, but they belong on certain people's phones and not everybody's phones. And the set of applications and the set of services that my 13-year-old babysitter wants on her phone is actually very different than the set of services and applications that I want on my phone. And this is more than just personalization from a ringtone perspective or a wallpaper's perspective. This is an actual, what are the applications, what are the services, what's the information that she wants at her fingertips versus I want on my fingertips. She probably doesn't care whether United Airlines is on time or not right now. I probably don't care the last time Britney Spears dropped her baby, right? So this is personalization from a whole new level, and it really comes from understanding who the user is across a myriad of applications and services across devices. And social media is part of that. So my teenage babysitter does want social media on her phone. She wants the ability to access her MySpace account, other people's MySpace account, what's hot on YouTube, and understand who's blogging what and all those kinds of things from her device. That's what she's very into right now. When she's a 1K traveler like everyone else on this plane, on this panel, she's probably going to be slightly altering what's most important to her in the set of information that she wants at her fingertips. And even me, the set of information I want on my fingertips from Monday to Friday is very different from the set of information I may want on a Saturday and a Sunday. So this is about how do you, it's not just how do you make a better widget, it's how do you actually enable the system to understand what widgets do I want at this point in time for my particular context. Because quite honestly, for the people who traveled here, they actually want a different set of information on their device for right now than the set of people here who are local and perhaps know the information.
Thanks. To me, this question is a no-brainer. I think definitely the social software belongs to the mobile devices. You call it mobile computers or handheld devices or mobile phones. But when I first read about the fact that Helio is going to carry MySpace, I was very excited because I think for the youth segment that will be a huge differentiator. And I think companies such as Helio and Empt, although they have their challenges, if they jump on this bandwagon early on, they will enjoy one thing that I think few other operators have, which are rich profiles. So having a direct marketing background myself, one thing that has always been a challenge is to build that 360-degree view of the customer. And I mean, regularly you see enterprises spend millions of dollars on CRM software and etc. just to be able to understand how customers interact with different channels of their own business. And try and integrate all that data, that's a huge segment of the enterprise software market. So we are potentially looking at volunteered rich profiles by the youth segment, and the companies that have that understanding, the marketing skill set to go along with that, can do so many different things with this data, and I think that will probably be the beginning of a meaningful mobile advertising market itself. So with that said, I agree with my fellow panelists here. I believe a 40-year-old probably wouldn't be as excited about having MySpace integration on their Palm Treo. But then again, this is a social phenomenon. It's not something that's necessarily limited to the youth segment. We probably, at least half or more of us, I don't know, maybe we should be doing a poll, have a LinkedIn profile. And that's an adult social network, and I potentially see that becoming a differentiator in the coming days if someone like Verizon or another operator picks that up. So my answer is definitely yes.
Ed?
Thanks. Yeah, I passionately agree with these guys. The parts of the industry they've talked about, Michael's going to talk a little bit about music. I'm older than all these guys. I have ties older than all these guys. I worked for the company that invented the automated teller machine, and if you want to talk about something that had a real cultural impact on the way we do business and our habits in the world, that was certainly one of them. It started out dispensing pre-printed traveler's checks. It did one thing. This originally did one thing. It's not going to for very long, and these networks are going to migrate down to this. I'm on the degenerate side. Since I started helping winos and junkies get money out of the ATM at 3 a.m. in the morning. My parents are so proud. Now I'm going to help all the children of the planet stand on the street corner and have a little camera that stares at them right here, because Gesture Tech does immersion technology. We take the camera, we find you in the picture, we immerse you in the game. So now every kid will be having a seizure while he's doing snowboarding on the edge of the street as he's looking into his camera. Or the camera actually looks away, finds a static point, and lets you play rollerball, or lets you play static ball. Or as we're doing in Japan right now, we're already finding a static point and helping you navigate the Tokyo subway system. So not only is it just content from a social standpoint, it's content, again, as you said, that may be very specific to someone's individual need. The kids on the lower end gaming point where they always want to see themselves immersed, or see themselves in the scoreboard at the end of the day and find out that they're number 4 in the world at playing this fancy game. Or if it's actually helping you navigate or geographically find your way or socially find your way through some network you're trying to navigate through. As we all know, the power of the camera itself, the video power of the camera itself, in just the last 18 months has made a fairly phenomenal jump. And unfortunately, I think we all know in this room that we suffer a little bit from a lag of technology internationally due to phones. We don't have some of the really rich things that are out there in the world today. If you could see some of the things we're doing with other countries, other companies, Docomo in Tokyo, which does these phones, etc., you would really see some amazing things that are going to be in about 6 months. So yeah, it is migrating this way. It is going to do more than just dispense travel checks with pre-printed numbers on them. It's going to be an avenue. It's going to be an open gateway to a lot of other functions, and he's going to tell you about where it goes to music as well. So,
Michael?
Yeah, I guess I'll play the contrarian a bit and then try to ground maybe some of the things we've been talking about. It's like a trifecta panel. You got 3 words that mean nothing: personalization, social networks, and like mobile. Do we have community? I think we have community too. We have like a lot of these buzzwords that really they're thrown around, but it's complicated to figure out what they mean. And I think on a phone, and in many cases a social network, it's very hard to determine ahead of time what people are going to do with it and why they're going to use it. I mean, if you had to say why MySpace would be so popular, 3 years ago, you would have no clue. Why is MySpace popular and Friendster is not as popular, and why do certain things take off and certain things don't? And on the phone, do we really want to look at our MySpace pages? Maybe, but it seems like that might just be one way of accessing this thing called a social network. And so what my company, Medium Bound, is interested in is we try to understand how people listen to music, why they like certain kinds of music, how they perceive music, and use that to create a meaningful experience around music. And so one thing that we sort of understand is that music is a very emotional thing. People have a very strong connection to it, and they use it to interact with people. So I can't tell you exactly what you're going to do with a cell phone that's going to create these connections, but you can imagine when people are running around with cell phones that can play music and they're interacting with each other, you're going to create very interesting applications. And so the goal is to try out a whole lot of them and see which ones people like to do and which ones people don't like to do. And I don't think we're at a stage yet where we know.
Thank you. Our last panelist is Mark Pascarella. He's the president of GoToIt Media Group. Thanks, Mark, for joining us.
Thanks.
And Mark, if the context of the question is, does social media, the first question we're answering is, does social media belong on the cell phone, and why?
Okay, good question. Thanks for being here. I was a little concerned that being the last scene, the last act, it would be the panelists and maybe just 2 persons in the audience. So thanks for sticking around. As it relates to social media, I think that it can be considered, much like all forms of media, as needing to be pervasive. And so whether it's on the television, on broadband, or on the handset, or some other type of wireless device, social media clearly has a place in consumers' lives, and increasingly consumers will demand access to that experience regardless of device or place or time. And so GoToIt has looked at the world and said, well, it's not about making social media or video content available to consumers. That's largely been solved and is not necessarily an interesting problem, but more importantly, it's about helping consumers make sense of it. How do you organize and present content, information, and entertainment in a way that makes it really simple and easy for the consumer to get instant access to what he or she is most interested in? So whether it's social media or the latest music videos, we believe that there needs to be a platform across each of those experiences, whether it's television, broadband, mobile, or an extension of mobile, that makes it really simple and easy for the consumer to get what he or she is most interested in.
Thank you. I think that, first of all, I just want to say, because it is the last panel of the event, that feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time. Just get up and start talking, and we're happy to answer them. I like to keep these sessions interactive rather than us talking and you listening. And the other thing I want to try and do is make sure that we provide some really valuable information. All of us agree in one form or another that this stuff makes sense on the phone, but what does that really mean to you? Why should you care about this? Why is it important? So what I want to talk about is a couple things, and then I want the panelists to comment on this, and again, anyone out there too, which is, the first is, what are the demand drivers? I think Michael touched upon this. What are the things that people want to do on the phone? People don't want to do social media on the phone. Nobody wants to do social media. They want to find a restaurant, get a date, connect with friends, see the latest Britney Spears baby dropping incident, or find out about their United Airlines flight. They want to do in specific things. What are the demand drivers? Okay, but before I do that, I want to get into the notion. Everyone mentions, when they mention social media, for obvious reasons, MySpace. Okay, MySpace is big, it's huge, it's got all these people, etc. And everyone perceives it as, hey, it's just about young people. Okay, because MySpace is largely about young people. So the perception is that social media is largely about young people, but it isn't. Okay, it's about everybody. It's just not as appealing in the MySpace sense to most of the people sitting in this room as it is to most of your kids or younger brothers and sisters. Okay, and the reason is this: how many of you go online to find a restaurant to go to? Show of hands. Okay, how many of you go online to read theater reviews, movie reviews? Okay, get a date. Go on LinkedIn. Okay, how many of you, when you go do that, look at the peer reviews, or go on Amazon when they have a product thing and say what other people who bought this product said, or what other people who read this book said, right? Or what other people thought of this airline, or this cruise, or this vacation destination, or that restaurant. That's all social media. That's all self-expression within the vertical context of the things that you want. Okay, the difference between the people in this room and our 16-year-old brothers or sisters or kids is that they have the time to sit there and just do that and express themselves for the sake of self-expression, whereas we largely, by and large, we all want entertainment too, right? When Britney drops her baby, we're all talking about it, okay? That we want it in the context of useful stuff in our life. Okay, this airline is better. I just came back from my honeymoon. This hotel is better than that one because they have 24-hour room service. And for a guy like me, that's very important. Or this is better than that, or stay here, or go there, or take this tour. We all want that kind of peer-driven information. We just want it in the context of our life. So one of the demand drivers, in our opinion, to bring social media to the phone is the immediacy. What the phone delivers in the way of communication, and now that's voice and IP, which is internet communication, is immediacy. Okay, you have it with you. It's not a phone call. We all had phones before cell phones, right? And we have emails mostly, for the most part, before cell phones. But the phone delivers immediacy to the communication. When I'm in San Jose looking for a Mexican restaurant, I want to be able to find one right now, and I want to see the reviews right now. Okay, or if something happens right now in the world we live in, think crazy things, I want to be able to post it right now and have someone else see it right now. Okay, it's the right now that the phone has that no other medium has. So we always try to think about those things that you're going to want to either post or find right now. Okay, the demand driver is the right now, and all these things have to be framed within the context of right now. If it was very easy for you to use your cell phone to say, hey, show me Mexican restaurants, and you saw a list and each one had 4 reader reviews of people who've been there because you're in a city you haven't been to and you haven't been to any of these restaurants, you probably read them. Okay, that would be you interacting with social media, and by the second or third time you did that, you might even post one going, hey, you know, this guy said this place is really great, I hated it, right? Or I loved it, or whatever the case may be. So I want everyone to sort of address, what are the demand drivers? Forget the buzzwords. What are the things that people will want to do at any age group that are going to get people to think this is a social media medium? Because that's I think, and not in any particular order, just.
Yeah, so one thing, when we think about the demand drivers and the reasons why people are going to buy these applications or sign on to them, use them, etc. The most important thing I have to remind people of in my company is that we are not the demographic, right? I mean, in terms of the people really that are spending the money on these types of applications, let me take a quick poll. How many in the room use a phone or a BlackBerry to check email? Some kind of device that you can check your email. A lot of hands going up. How many have a ringtone that's a song on your phone right now? Okay, a couple, less. How many have a wallpaper on your phone, like that you bought? Okay, and how many have a custom sleeve or case that is tricked out, so your phone is tricked out in some way? Okay, and what I'm saying is that from a percentage perspective in this room, we're probably flipped from what the percentage is across the board in terms of the average people that are spending money on this. So I think when you kind of look at the patterns of what people have actually done, ringtones are still a huge business. It was a business that not very many people predicted in advance, and so I guess I just caution against the concept of things that we might like. Sort of being that main driver. There's the things that it comes down to, as far as I can tell, is killing time, connecting socially, and expressing yourself, right? Those are the three drivers today, as opposed to, in looking up actual information and trying to find things, find the restaurant and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about a phone seems to be, when you talk about social, you actually can interact with another human being in a room that also has a phone. I mean, yeah, you can go online, you can read reviews, to sort of the disconnected, globule thing in the air. But I think one of the neat things is that you're around other human beings when you're using this thing, which means you're going to zap stuff to them, you're going to play music for them, you're going to really interact with a human being using an electronic device that's going to help you do that. And I mean, a lot of the interesting applications, in Europe have been around meeting each other in a bar and location-driven items. I mean, it seems like that's the cool thing about a phone, is that it's actually a physical connection with another human being, not just looking at someone's website.
Yeah. But I want to come back to something you said earlier, Michael, where you said it's hard, who would have predicted MySpace would have become so big, or these kinds of things. And the point I would submit is that people have been looking for the killer mobile app for a long time. And the reality is there is no killer mobile app. And what are the demand drivers? The demand drivers change from person to person, from context to context, and as people come up with new things. And I think part of our job at OpenWave, at least, is to help enable a variety of different kinds of demand drivers and to make it very easy for people to experiment with new kinds of applications to see whether this will be the next MySpace or the next Friendster kinds of thing, in order to go understand that. Because there are lots of interesting uses for embedded cameras that people have come up with. Some really caught on, and you can go to a bar in Germany now and take a picture and it gets posted up on the big screen, and you can use it for dating in Korea and all these other kinds of things. And other people embedded cameras inside your refrigerator, so you could be at the grocery store and figure out whether you're out of milk or not. And by and large, that didn't really catch on as a great idea. So part of our job, when you say what are the demand drivers, I don't think we necessarily either can say today what exactly the demand driver is on Thursday, but we may not be able to necessarily predict what the demand driver is next week or next month, because I don't think people really understand how these social communities really get built.
Right. So I mean, does that impact the businesses? I mean, so if the fundamental question is we can't distinguish why MySpace worked and Friendster didn't, that's got a ramification for the business side of all this, right? So if you're building these things, I guess we can come up with some rules of things you shouldn't do. You better have a good technology, better work, better be fast, better not explode and stop working when you really want to use it. But other than that, are there any rules or things that we can use?
So my point is that it's all around self-expression and allowing the individual to do the things that they're going to want to do. Unlike the wired world where, by and large, everyone came and did email. We haven't found the killer app that if I go launch this service, 80% of my users will go kind of operate it. And you could argue that SMS in Europe is now there, but that took 10, 12 years in order to really get there kinds of stuff. So we can talk about how many people actually want to go find information or look at TV. There's a variety of different pockets of segments who want to do that, but I come back to the fact that the set of information that I want to do depends on my context, depends on my identity, depends on my time of day, and those kinds of things. And it's difficult to predict a priori what the demand drivers will be for information. I think you have to enable a variety of things and allow that individual user to self-select or automatically select based on understanding their digital identity across a variety of different services and what they've done in the past, to say, this guy's going to be interested in this Final Four app, this person's not, this person's going to be interested in watching 24, and this person's going to be interested in watching reruns of MASH. There was a question in the back.
Yeah, in the back.
So I largely agree with the panel, but I think it's very difficult to predict what will take off, what won't take off. fact that the carrier networks in the wireless world are such a closed system, doesn't it create a giant muzzle on the innovation? So if you don't really know whether it's going to take a life of its own, is Verizon even going to bother to carry it? And like it seems like IM would be an obvious application that would be pervasive on mobile phones, but until they figure out how to get 2 cents for every key click, they probably won't want to roll it out.
Well, and it's a great point. I think that the second part of what of your first sentence, we all have said it's hard to predict what will work, but predicting what won't, and kind of seeing how that closed the walled garden affects that. I think you're right on. I would argue that IM probably is the number one. Crippled IM in the form of SMS is the number one application today by volume of activity in the U.S. by several orders of magnitude, right? I mean, if you count every time somebody kind of opens up that session and starts messaging with their friends, it's one-to-one IM. It's kind of hard to tie it in together with other people, and it depends on what's on the what's kind of available on your phone. But the one thing that it is universal, right? You can SMS between any carrier and between any phone. Every phone has this capability on it. So I think that what you're going to see going forward, people are going to add the functionality of social networking types of applications first they're going to do it within a single carrier's network. But I think that in terms of saying what's not going to succeed, I'll go ahead and throw out a prediction that the Helio-MySpace combination is not going to attract the number of people to Helio that would be needed to make that thing a cluster of activity. Because I don't think people are going to go and buy a phone just to be able to get that application and switch carriers.
So I asked the question that what are the demand drivers, and I did it exactly for the reason of the answers that we got, which is that you don't know what the demand drivers are, right? So for each person it's different. We talk about and we say, oh, social media, okay, well, younger people use it, the broader we are the user base, but the we in this room, okay, we're not the ideal users. How many of you, if you had an application at a conference just like this one and you were in the cocktail hour and meeting someone and you met someone interesting from a work perspective and you thought, hey, I remember that guy's name exactly, who is he at the company? You could type in his name into LinkedIn or directly into some social media application and you could find out, hey, this guy was here and he was here, and you would have some context. You were about to meet someone you didn't know or have a bunch of panelists you didn't know. People would do that. People in this room would do that. That's a social media application. Okay, so for every single human being, and I think David made the point very, very true, that at 6 o'clock at night, I want different things than I want at 6 o'clock in the morning. On Friday, I want different things than I want on Tuesday. And every 16-year-old, by the way, isn't the same either. Okay, they're way more diverse and individual than we are. So for the demand drivers are, by definition, individual, and the whole point of this panel is about personalizing the phone. The personality is what you do with it. What our job is, I believe, is to purvey very robust, clever, creative, and going back to David's initial comment, intelligent ways to get to the things we want to easily and quickly. The only reason I'm going to use my phone in data mode to find a Mexican restaurant is when it's easier than calling 411 or my assistant saying, hey, can you find me a good Mexican restaurant in San Jose? Okay, only then am I actually going to do it. So the intelligence of the experience, the intelligence of the information design, all of these things are relevant, and if we deliver those things, let the consumer take it from there. I think that one of the other questions that I think is interesting to consider is, what are some of the issues? What are the problems? What are we not thinking about? Okay, and then I want to get into, why should we do this? What are how is anyone of the people in this room going to make money from doing this, right? We're all here for a business purpose, so what is that business purpose? But what are some of the issues? What are some of the things you're concerned about when you think about identity, when you think about figuring out the music someone likes, or playing a game that, is gonna, you're standing on a street corner moving around or gyrating, that what are the kinds of issues and concerns? Obviously, the recent things with MySpace have popularized this notion that, oh my God, if my kids use MySpace, they're gonna be abducted by aliens or, predators or something. Well, what are the things that are special to the mobile context that you think about in the context of your product development?
Quick comment. I think what we have seen in the recent years is, first, the devices that are 3G devices are starting to take hold. And there's data that shows people who are using these devices are much more likely to take advantage of their 3G features. So people who are wondering, oh, why in the world aren't people using MMS 2 years ago? I'm now figuring out that part of the reason was the devices. And I think the network is in place right now for the most part. So what remains in my mind is the UI, the user experience, which is very fragmented, and the tools that go along with it in terms of how to sort out the clutter, all the content that's available to you. I think those are the main issues that will stay here as a focus for many technology companies, including MyStrand. So the successful implementation, I believe, has to be one in which the user doesn't have to wait 10 seconds in between 2 page views. And it shouldn't take 45 seconds for an application to load. I think we're all, in a way celebrating the MySpace availability on the mobile platform. But again, if you read the blogs, even MySpace employees are complaining that it's really a very substandard user experience right now. So, and I agree with your comment, that alone won't be able to pull away those teenagers from their existing data plans and existing phones. But nevertheless, it is a good differentiator in my mind. So but it's going to take much more than that.
Well, and to that comment, how much do you think of what David talked about, that understanding the identity of the user, the personality of that person, to make the information intelligence greater so that I'm less clicks away? One thing is making the clicks faster. Okay, well, none of us in this room, unless anyone here works at Singular Verizon, control that nearly as much as we can control. Let's minimize the number of clicks before I get to what I want, right? That's something that I think is an important part of making this more available. Any other comments on the issues?
I'd like to make one comment. The gentleman brought up earlier about are the carriers interested in taking this risk on some of these ideas, and it's very, very tough. We deal with this in our company globally, and there are other people that are making this much easier to bring these kind of ideas, because you're making about a $5 to $10 million bet here. You might be right, you might be wrong. They don't care. They're going to get their money to click on this somehow. So to make it pervasive, it's going to have performance tied to it, or they're going to tell you to go have a nice day.
Right.
And that's a never-ending problem that we all have, to get this content down there fast, quick, clean, intelligent.
Right.
Not just when you go to the social community, what you're getting is not always the final. That's the problem, and you get many clicks away from what you want. And the carriers are not going to tie that line up from an opportunity to count clicks or make fast calls or make fast SMS. They're not going to give you that opportunity until you have some real velocity behind it.
I wanted to add one other thing.
Okay, after David will.
Which is, in addition, I agree the user experience is very important. I agree that the speed of interactivity is very important. I do believe there are things that we can do to address both of those, independent of just waiting for a 4G network.
All right.
But the other issue I wanted to bring up is one of privacy. And as we, lots of regulations now about you can't carry your cell phone with a camera into the locker room because you can take a picture of that, public person, naked kinds of stuff. And as we push more and more services to the device, and as we do more and more profiling, if you will, of understanding who the user is in order to generate that personalized experience on the device, in order to understand what content you want versus what content you want, there is a privacy issue that needs to be addressed. That got that historically has always come up, right? It got addressed when Google announced that they were going to be reading your email to do better ad placement. Everyone raised the privacy issue for a while and then kind of went quiet again.
Right.
And it gets addressed time and time again, but that will be an issue that continually will come up as we push more and more content to the mobile phone, and as you use your mobile phone to do more and more things. So I'm sitting there watching my movie while the guy next to me is doing whatever.
The question in the
I don't know if this is exactly time in the discussion, but this might be for Brett mostly. I don't know who else follows this, but one of the characteristics of the business is the discontinuity of the technology curve on these things. So processing power going through the roof really quickly, bandwidth going up, screens getting amazingly nice. The amount of storage you're gonna be able to carry with you at some point. You just download MySpace and bring it with you, And so in 3 years, just to be a little more optimistic on how the phone works front, what can we expect? should we be thinking, if you're from an investment perspective, or you're building a product, and maybe roll out in 18 months, give you 18 months to try it.
Yeah.
You don't want to shoot the gun and go, oh my God, I can't do this, so I'm going to make my application like this, right? So
It's a great question, and I'll answer it two ways. The first and quick part is, yes, the hardware is going to just get phenomenally better. I mean, right now you can get a queue, and of course the carriers all subsidize phone prices, but they're going to be subsidizing them for the foreseeable future. So you can get a queue for $200, and this thing has like a hundreds of megahertz processor in it. It's got a room for an SD card. You can get, I'm guessing, probably 4 gigs in a card now pretty easily. There's going to be hard drives going into the phones at some point soon. And so the processing power is going to continue to get better. The screen sizes are going to get bigger, and the screens are going to turn sideways, right? You already see this in Japan. I just got back from Tokyo, and I was telling these guys, when I was there, I saw lots of people sitting around, and people watching it's an over-the-air broadcast digital TV that comes to your phone. So I predict you're going to see the screens get wider. They're going to turn sideways. They'll be touch screen. So I think the hardware is going to continue to make great advances. The place where we're all going to have problems is not going to be in the fact that there's great hardware and cool stuff on the phone. As developers and people trying to write software for phones, the place where we're going to continue to have problems is the software itself. There's no Windows for the phone world, right? There's no one operating system that you can go write software for phones and have it do useful things. If you're writing software for phones, you're having to either do it in Java, which is going to be supported on a number of phones, but not on all of them. And let's say that you are supporting Java. You're only going to get the multimedia API on phones X, Y, and Z, and you'll get some other API on these other phones. And so the other choice, if you're not writing to something like Java or Flash, which Adobe is pushing, but is not widely adopted yet, is to write it in the native operating systems of the phone. So you're writing stuff in Brew and Rex and Symbian and these what we in the industry call closed OS and open OS phones. So I think that's going to be the real thing that as a company, and like you said, if you're an investor looking at investing in somebody, if they don't have an answer for that problem, then what they're really saying is we're just writing Java apps, and we're going to be limited on the number of handsets we can go out, we're going to be limited on the number of carriers we can support, and if they do have an answer, it's going to have to be a fairly complex and involved answer, as I'm sure the OpenWave can attest.
Yeah, I mean, while I might run screaming from the analogy of Windows on the phone, one of the things that OpenWave is doing with our handset manufacturers is addressing the ability to have a common user interface across different kinds of devices so that you can have simplified user interfaces and have the same user experience across different devices, even from different manufacturers. So that is something that we're driving as we work with our handset manufacturers, as we work with Nokia and Samsung and all those kinds of people to actually get a layer, if you will, into the handset so that you can push the same application with the same user experience to different kinds of handsets.
Sure, but Flash is doing the same thing.
But a lot of people are doing the same thing.
And there's going to be competing standards. I guess when I said Windows, I mean clearly Windows makes an operating system for the phone. I meant there's no one kind of UI or OS that has 90% market.
But coming back to the, Nick raised the business issue. One of the things we can't ignore is the long tail of buying patterns. And while it is true that we can design applications for the brand new phone with the really big screen, the fact of the matter is that business case, when you go sell it to the operator, he's looking at 99% of the phones that are capable of doing this and 1% of the phones that are capable of using this new service. And we're seeing the typical buying pattern of purchasing new phones, slower than it was previously, and people are holding on to phones for over 3 years now. So one of the reasons that MMS took so long to take off, quite honestly, is because we're still not at the point where 70–80% of the population have MMS-capable phones. And how long, it's been, well over 6–7 years now since the first MMS phones came out. So I agree that there will be some really cool new phones with some really great hardware that you can do some really incredible things on. But 80–90% of the people won't have them yet. And the carrier is going to be looking at where am I getting most of my revenue from and how much am I going to invest in a forward-looking thing and what's the tail on when that actually turns into real revenue.
But so like 3 years from now, what do you think it'll be? What do you think the middle thing you have to design for will be?
Well, the replacement cycle is 18 months now in terms of national average, and the mean is fairly close to that. So it's not, and there are, one thing when you kind of look at handset adoption replacement and you see the numbers out there on the statistics, you have to remember too that there are a lot of people that don't replace a handset, but they didn't use it very much to begin with, right? So they don't count as much, and especially when you lump in prepaid in there and you kind of look at some of this in terms of the phones that are out there that aren't being replaced. Among kind of the sort of core demographic that is really driving most of the revenue in mobile, the people that are buying ringtones or paying for any kind of an application on a phone, the handset replacement cycles actually shrink a little bit. So they're 18 months on average, and then they get smaller for people that want to look cool, that want to, the kind of people that really drive the spending in our society. And it makes sense, right? If you're the kind of person that's going to spend money for an app on a phone, you don't mind spending money for a phone. And if you're the kind of person who just uses it to make phone calls, and I know a lot of people like that, if it makes phone calls, a StarTAC's probably fine for you. So in terms of where we're going to be in 3 years, I think you can look at the cutting edge that's out there today, and you can say that there's going to be a lot of that technology on the phone. So clearly, what we've seen in the past 18 months is almost every phone has a camera, and almost everybody has a camera phone in terms of just the volumes that are out there. And the handset OEMs are certainly shipping a bunch of phones now, and that's not just going into emerging in new markets. So I'd say it's safe to say that you'll see that almost all of the phones in 3 years will support a multimedia experience. Mm-hmm. You guys, y'all jump in. They're going to support multimedia. I don't think you're going to see the division get fixed in terms of the OSs and the Java versus Flash. I think that Flash is going to make a significant impact, and you're going to see Flash on a lot more phones, the way that you have Flash on PCs today.
How about scratch resistance?
I don't know about scratch. I have a screen cover on every scratchable screen I have because I don't know. That's not really in the OEM's best interest, right?
Right. Although it points to the fact that as much as we put stuff inside the phone, just the way the phone looks can drive a whole bunch of the purchasing decision anyways.
Look at the Razr, right? What's driving the people buying the Razr? It's not the fact that it can play music, which it can. I don't know if anybody saw Dave Ulmer talking, before from Motorola. People bought the Razr because it looks cool. Yeah. It happens that for Motorola, it's a great way to get a bunch more cameras and media-capable devices out there. And really what you're going to see is handset OEMs are just going to stop shipping phones that don't have a camera and an MP3 player in them. Have you tried to buy a phone lately that didn't have a camera in it? Go in the Sprint store, the Verizon store, and show me the phone that doesn't have a camera in it. So in terms of that state of the art, I'd say that they're all going to have that multimedia capability, and they're all going to have at least a capability for a lot of memory in them, just because the prices are going down and that's going to move forward.
I want to make there was a question over here. I want to come to that. I want to make a couple comments before that, just clarifying a couple things and bringing some of these points together. Our view, and this might be a contrarian view, and I find myself in the surprising position of defending the carriers, and if any of you have read any of my blogs out there, that's not usually my position. But I would posit that today, the capabilities of the average handset in the hands of the average consumer far exceed the intelligence and the interestingness of the applications available to that consumer, okay? Everyone's building games and ringtones for 15-year-old kids. What about the 190 million people in America alone who are over the age of 18 who have phones? Where are the intelligent, interesting applications for those people, okay? Not that adults don't play games on their phones, they just play different games, but where are the intelligent applications for those people? Today's phones are capable of doing a lot more than they're doing, and it's not because people in their 30s and 40s don't want data services. We did a program 2 years ago, and I don't want to get into details, but we had 180,000 people using it. 77% were women over the age of 40, okay? 2 years ago, this is a data services application that worked on phones. The point is that application design and the intelligence and the availability of the kinds of services I want versus somebody else wants are not available. That's what's the hindrance in the application experience. The second thing is, I think that the competing operating systems and the competing carrier networks, all of these things aren't the hindrance either, okay? I think that competing I'm glad that there isn't one dominant operating operating system and one multi-trillion-dollar company telling us how everyone to do everything. I want there to be competing systems. I want there to be competition for the best app that emerges. Even if you get your app on one carrier and it achieves moderate success on one carrier, every one of the 4 major carriers in America is bigger than any one of the cable networks in America. Okay, Verizon, 40 million people, 50 million people, 20 million people, 30 million, these are the numbers we're talking about. So there's enough people to get your application successful. And I know from taking our applications to the operators, if you show them something compelling, the doors will open. Okay, and in addition to which, we're seeing more and more of the closed networks. Verizon announced a deal just week before last with Thumbplay, an off-deck games distributor that, hey, they're going to let them sell off-deck. Okay, so I think that those are the kinds of things. I also think that simplicity of application development and design can be very, very interesting. And again, praising a carrier, on my singular phone, this phone I bought, their Media Mall now has the ability for me to punch in my favorite sports team and the zip code I live in. And right when I hit this one button, talking about minimizing the clicks, it tells me the score of the Angels game and the weather in Redondo Beach, no matter where I am. Okay, I'm one click away from knowing this game, the score of my favorite sports team. Okay, the Angels. Maybe not as popular up here in the Bay Area. So I think that there's a lot that you can do within the context of current capabilities that hasn't been done. Yes, phones are going to get better, and multimedia and 3G and 4G and batteries are going to last forever, and screens are great. But that's not why people aren't doing cool things on their phone. There's a question back here.
Yes, this question is to David. You were heading identities. Today we are identified by the 164 numbers, phone numbers, and as the proliferation of WiMAX and 802.11 happens, increasingly we will have IP address space in phones. The question I'm asking is, what is your roadmap for migrating to IP address space infrastructure completely? If it is going to happen, if carriers are interested, and if there are any drivers for that infrastructure. The second question is, what are the security issues and how OpenWave plans to solve this?
So we actually have some customers who run all IP networks today. I think Nextel's iDEN network is a great example of a network that has used OpenWave technology for a long time, and all the phones on the iDEN network have an IP address and talk straight IP, and that actually presented a lot of challenges in the early days of scalability and other kinds of factors. So there are some real examples of that being used today. OpenWave has a rich roadmap to help the operators migrate into that all IP world as they look at fixed mobile convergence and the onset of IMS. But at the same time, what we're doing is we're focusing on helping the operators understand that there are, to Nick's point, new and innovative applications that they can launch today, and that this isn't a wait until IMS happens before you can do anything interesting, but there are a variety of interesting, what I'll call IMS-like applications that you can launch today, like video voicemail, like avatars, like a variety of other kinds of find me, follow me services that you can launch today on your existing networks and simply have those continue to run when you move to an all IP network under the covers. So all of our software, OpenWave makes both software infrastructure or plumbing, middleware, software application, end user applications, as well as software that goes in the handset. That entire portfolio has a roadmap to be IP ready for when operators start rolling out IMS networks and when they need IPv6 and other kinds of support. But we're focusing on making sure that they have ARPU generating services and innovative services that they can launch today, and simply explaining to them how they can continue to run those when they move to an all IMS network tomorrow.
I want to ask a question to Takin and Ed and Michael, who are on sort of the vertical. David and Brett and I, we make platforms that make these things possible. You guys make applications. You make a game platform that is, I've actually seen and is very cool, by the way. And you guys with music, and I think you guys are music also, right? That what are the application development and deployment experience? What are you hearing from the consumer? What are you hearing from the carriers? Where does personalization, where does social media fit into what you're doing today? Or is it something you're looking at, but it's not really a part of what you're doing today?
I mean, personalization, which again is a really horrible word, is core to what we're doing. So we're basically trying to figure out ways to understand how someone listens to music. And once you understand that, how can you help them have a better experience around music? So, if on a mobile device, every time you open up the music store, there should be a set of new releases sitting there that you might like based on what you've done in the past and how you listen to music. What we're really interested in doing is trying to understand past just pure preferences or data, but saying things like, you're someone that in general seems to listen to albums instead of singles. That's a useful piece of information. Or you're a very adventurous and eclectic listener, someone that we can make really wide-ranging recommendations of things to try, and you might be very receptive, versus a listener that might be more cautious, someone that might only stick to music that they're really familiar with. So it's trying to understand how someone parses and perceives this content, and using that information to help drive the whole experience around it. So you can do that on a cell phone. We work with Napster. We do that on their online music service. Each subscriber should have a different experience based around how they're actually using the music. So, it's core to us. At the same time, though, just because someone's listening to country music doesn't mean you're going to give them an ad for a gun rack. That's a bad use of personalization, in our opinion. People ask us all the time, hey, you know a lot about how people listen to music, so if I were to tell you about some music someone's listening to, you can tell me what ads to show them, right? And you can do things like that, but you have to be very, very careful when you get into personalization, or especially around a subjective, emotional subject like music or entertainment, about what you do with that. And so we can help our customers avoid making those mistakes and maybe show a couple good ads.
I'd like to add a few things to that. I think our approach is definitely a community-based one in terms of music discovery, because I believe the 1.0 of personalization applications failed miserably on the web platform, because they had more of a I'm the smart guy in the room and you're my subject type of attitude to personalization. So what we do instead is we have applications that run on multiple mobile platforms, Windows Mobile being one, that introduce people to people as we find similarities between their music listening habits. And how we do that is we actually log their listening habits, which is a permission-based activity, of course. So we have what we think is the most relevant piece of information to understand your taste, what you have been listening to, which pretty much bypasses the problems of the typical collaborative filtering applications, where you may buy a gift for your daughter and your recommendations are going to change the next day and become entirely different. So that's just one example. But I think I was over at the Punchline Comedy Club several weeks ago here in San Francisco, and there was this stand-up comedian guy. He stood up and he told a short story, which I think is in a way signifying the old approach. He was trying to send a message to his girlfriend saying, I have a cold, I have this terrible cough, so I won't be able to talk to you. And while he was writing down messaging C-O-U, the recommendation for the word, the prediction was cougar. So, this is an entirely different type of context. So just for the hell of it, he sent a message, something like, I'm being attacked by a cougar right now, so I just can't talk to you. I got an immediate phone call back from his girlfriend. So I think we need to really avoid those situations in which we're trying to, in our mind, personalize content, but we're actually, embarrassing ourselves. Yeah. So I think that really requires you to explain what's behind the recommendations.
Sometimes it's more important to know what not to recommend than what to recommend.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I can speak to what we've done at GoToIt, which is to license content from categories such as music, sports, news, and entertainment. And as opposed to trying to make recommendations, we've focused on giving the consumer the functionality and control of getting precisely and instantly to what he or she wants. And I think that's an important point, particularly when you get to a mobile application where the session time is so small. Watching a linear video stream may not be what the consumer is really interested in, but getting precise access to content is, and from that, linking the platforms in a meaningful way. So everyone in this room owns a mobile handset, but you also own a television, likely connected to some multi-channel video service, and you probably have a PC connected to some sort of broadband connection. They can't all live independently. There has to be a meaningful linkage between the mobile environment, the PC environment, and the television environment.
I'm fascinated by a couple of things that are happening out there. The toy companies, in order to solidify a greater portion of their market, are putting SpongeBob SquarePants on the games. A demographic clearly that's way, way much lower emerging market to bring them in. The carriers love that. They want to be able to find that sub 6, 7-year-old kid and bring this along. The surfboard games as well that are going into the mid-teen, the sweet market. So that I don't spell cougar, we call it shake, rock, and roll. We actually, once you have the textual message up there, as I move the phone like this, I am moving the cursor to the letters itself. And then I pop it like that and it takes that letter. Our product does that very, very quickly. So in other words, we're not always just thumbing it. We're now moving the device. So you can imagine a young child with no motor skills to that area yet can't do that. They're watching SpongeBob, but all the way up here on our end, we're maybe starting to shake, rattle, and roll the phone a little bit to do the message as well. That's creating a very, very broad horizontal market for other toy manufacturers or content guys like yourselves that want to do that and run on these platforms. It's amazing.
Nick, I wanted to say one thing. Just Packet Video. We really are a consumer-facing applications company. That's really kind of our bread and butter and most of what we do. So I wanted to throw in an answer on that. For example, we make Verizon's VCast application. All the software that's on the phone when you use VCast to go in and buy music, watch a music video, look up the content catalog, find artists, all of those sorts of things. That's our software, and we do similar sorts of things around the world. We power music services and television services with Docomo, T-Mobile Germany, in Orange, a lot of carriers around the world, and we are seeing a lot of call for different functionality for personalization, for community aspects and so forth, integrated into those music and video services themselves. So for example, some of the features that we have the ability to put out there today would be things like, based on my list of favorite artists, and we tend to agree with, rather than trying to embarrass somebody, you just get people to kind of indicate who their favorites are. Like when you're getting ready to buy a ringtone, just say, add this to my favorites. But based on your list of favorites, we can do things like tell you when there's an upcoming concert near you, kind of using the location information that the carrier has. Tell you when a band that you like is coming on TV tonight. Monitoring, in the US, we monitor over 36,000 TV listings a week. Tell you about music news and so forth. And so that, to us, it's not a socialized side of things, but it's certainly personalized in terms of being able to deliver personalized music information and entertainment content back to the consumer with an eye towards not only keeping them happier and saying, let's keep them in the service, but also allowing you to upsell and cross-sell to them different things based on what you already know they like. So if you know somebody's a big fan of Radiohead, and you know that Radiohead's coming on TV tonight, the ability to send them an SMS message that says Radiohead's going to be playing on Saturday Night Live, and click here to download the latest Radiohead ringtone or to watch a video is a powerful message, and doesn't require very much in the way of technology on the handset today, since most of that's happening back in the server space.
I think that's a very good point. I also want to go back to a comment that I think it was Mark that made, and the question out by the gentleman in the blue striped shirt about IP, that one of the things that we like to talk about, and I think is happening more and more, and then I'll come to the question here, is that we love your TV. You made the comment that you have your TV and you have your PlayStation, your plasma TV, your 800 channels on that plasma TV, your broadband internet connection, which connects you through Google to basically everything, right? And then you have your cell phone amongst all the different devices that you have. That these are not competing mediums and platforms, okay? IP is a universal transport layer that should be able to get you to anything on any device, right? Our whole philosophy is the web. Everyone looks at, we're going to get people from the web to the phone. We don't want to get people from the web to the phone. We want them to do some things on the web, and then when they don't have the web in the PC sense in front of them, in the computer sense, they have their phone, but they can get to the intelligent parts of that experience, right? That I think that the other thing that is relevant to remember is, why is all of this important? Why is personalization important? Because if demographic targeting worked, then 500 cable channels would make it, advertiser would need nothing else, right? Nowadays, the average cable television program has less than 10,000 viewers. Okay, so it's a highly vertical group of people that's watching show X versus show Y. I think what advertisers and marketers and product vendors are learning, right, what all of us are learning is that all of us are consumers for almost anything given context, time of day. I very recently got married. I spent more time in Bed Bath & Beyond in the last 3 weeks of my life than in my life than the 36 years before that. Okay, looking at things like pumice stones, which I didn't even know existed. So the point is that these kinds of, the context of what I want and the context of what I am most likely to buy is best understood through a relationship with me, an intelligent relationship with me that develops over a period of time. I'm an avid Angels fan. I check the score 3 times during the game. When I'm sitting at dinner, no matter what I'm doing, I hit that button and I glance at it and I check the score of the game. But what's the point of showing me an ad for the ticket to the game tonight? None. I'm in San Francisco. I'm not going to be able to go to the game, right? So understanding the full context of my life makes it easier for you to deliver to me the things, the marketing for the products and services I'm most likely to buy. Okay, and ultimately, if that doesn't happen, none of us are going to be in business. And the point of all of this is that, right? The increased understanding of who I am and what I want at the time, and then delivering me what is a point of relevancy marketing that's highly personalized to my needs and wants. It's not just that you don't want to show a country music fan an ad for a gun rack. I like Kenny Rogers and I don't buy guns, but the point of it is that even if I like Kenny Rogers, and even if I liked guns, showing me an ad for a gun rack when it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm on my way to a business meeting is pretty pointless, right? The point of mobile and the point of personalization and the point of the immediacy is to deliver dramatically increased relevancy in the marketing messages that we all see. We actually have about 10 minutes left, so there was a question here.
Yeah, another question I have. One of them for me is going back to the beginning of the panel, we were discussing social community, social networking belongs to mobile phones, or it doesn't, more communications. I feel like it belongs to, but I still think that unless mobile operators start pushing out this as a revenue driver, we will never get there unless Wi-Fi connections are open and are available to everyone. Why I'm saying this? Suppose Brent was just saying that at your company you are developing applications for the end user. But later on, what you said was that the main companies that you're working with is you are applying your applications to very soon Vcast, as an example, and with the Docomo Simo. For me, at the end, these are not really end user applications. What you are doing here is licensing your applications to a mobile operator that is taking it to the end user. So here for me, there is a main question that is, again, going back to the off-portal, on-portal issues. If we go around and look to many companies that we are around here, we would say, okay, maybe here today we've been 100 companies that are developing mobile applications, technologies. I'm sure that 5, 10 of those are brilliant ideas. But what happens is that there is not access to the end user. You have to go through the Vcasts of the world in order to get to the end user. So what happens? That these companies that are already in Vcast, those companies could be successful. The ones that cannot get onto the portals, it's almost impossible for those companies to try. Okay, that's my opinion. So, and why I'm saying that? One is the pricing. It's clear that in Vodafone, if you are not in Vodafone Live, for an end user to access your content, they have to pay $30 because data services in Europe are very expensive. If you are in Vodafone Live, you don't pay anything. Okay? So for me, one of the main issues is how the mobile operators are going to be open to the off-deck, off-portal content. I don't think that they are doing they are pushing that type of services now. And the second one that I would say is that mobile carriers, I think that now they are really focused on the press out the bottom line and making revenues out of data as quick as possible. So I was listening the other day to Arun Sarin, the CEO of Vodafone, the shareholders, and he was commenting about data services. And I was surprised that the only thing that he was talking was about the downloads of ringtones and downloads of music track that Vodafone was having in Europe. They were talking about 400,000 full track downloads. And that was the main issue. And the main issue is, for me, what the panelists here are talking about is about thinking forward. How I'm going to know more about my user, how am I going to start gathering information about my user, how am I going to explore that information in 1 year, 2 years from now. Not how many tracks am I going to download next year. Because, I mean, downloading tracks, it's something that probably we will always do it through the PC, and it's difficult to do it through the mobile. And the last question, if you give 10 more seconds, is I think there is a huge geographical difference on the world in the mobile arena that doesn't happen so much in the PC. In the mobile arena, what I see is that US, we have here the social recommender softwares, we have the MySpace, with a penetration around young people of 80%. Okay? In Europe, that doesn't happen. But in Europe, what we have is a huge penetration of mobile, lower prices compared to the US. The only thing where I see that social networks, technologies and prices are more similar are probably in Asia. And they are showing us that it works. The problem that we have here is that in the US, prices for data are high, penetration of mobile is not as high as in Asia, but we have the MySpace. In Europe, we don't have the MySpace, we have the technology, and we have the... So those are my points. Probably geographical differences of portal on portal, and those are for me the two main issues that we have.
I think those are all really interesting comments, and I think that whenever we talk about Europe versus Asia, or Europe versus America, or Asia versus America, you touch upon basically one of the opening questions we all touched on, which is demand drivers, right? People talk about, I'm originally from India, and in India people can make payments with their cell phone. Well, guess what? It's because there isn't an ATM machine on every street corner, 14 that you'll trip over between here and the bathroom, right? There is no, it's an efficient way to pay for things, right? We don't need another way to pay for things in America, just like we don't need another way to get to CNN. So when you launch CNN on Vcast and then you wonder why no one's watching it, it's not because people aren't interested in television content on their phone. It's because in this market, that television content isn't that exciting because you can get it 600 other places. You can't escape a CNN TV, right? They're on every bar and every restaurant and every whatever. So demand drivers are local. Because everybody has a cell phone, everybody doesn't want to do the same thing on the cell phone. Down to 6 people, that's the whole point of personalization, right? To the concept of the carriers and them opening up and off-deck, we're big believers in off-deck, but I again submit that there are plenty of intelligent services that you can design using SMS and mobile internet, or what's called WAP, okay, that has gotten a lot better. WAP, the old acronym WAP is crap, I don't think applies anymore. Text and pictures and all the kinds of things you can do with WAP services that any internet-enabled phone can get to. So I want other people here to comment on that, because I think we touched on some interesting things.
But you can't, I think that WAP and SMS are great because they are very ubiquitous. But you can't build a rich service of the kind that you've seen taking off in Europe and taking off in Japan, just using WAP. If you look at something, look at the difference between, say, an iMode and then the advanced capabilities of the things that you see with like live TV from Orange or live TV from Vodafone and some of these really complicated applications. And you're right that the drivers are very different and they're very social. What we see in Japan is a byproduct of a number of things. It's a byproduct of a group of people that don't tend to drive their own cars. They take a lot of mass transportation, and you're not allowed to talk on the cell phone, but you can do anything else on it while you're sitting there on the mass transportation. In Europe, you're seeing a group of people that don't necessarily have credit cards and don't necessarily have computers, but they've all got a phone. And so, like you said, the driver there in terms of what people want first and what they're willing to pay for and to work with is going to be very different. And for other reasons that are really probably more cultural and business, Europe is a lot more open to off-deck content. It's about 80-20, where in the U.S. it's flipped the other way, and it's 35-65 off-deck content to carrier content. So I think you're going to continue to see that. It may start to erode slightly, but I don't think that you're going to see it erode in a vast way. And the carriers have real reasons for the things they do. If you talk to Verizon, which is considered one of the more closed carriers, what they'll say is, we've talked to our consumers and they want to have a nice, consistent a consumer experience. And so the way we give them that is by putting it into a form that kind of looks the same. And they have reasons for the things they do. Some other carriers have a different idea of they want to be more of a pipe, more of a vending machine, and allow different people in with different services.
But I do want to address the on-net, off-net issue if I can for a second, because we're seeing, while it is true that a lot of operators have in the past tried to have the walled garden and may in fact still be marketing the walled garden, the reality is that most of their subscribers, we see subscribers around the world at anywhere from 30 to 60% of the subscriber traffic is going off net today. Going off deck today, and that's true if you go look at Singular, if you look at Verizon, if you look at Sprint, if you look at Europe, and if you look at Asia. So I think that the operators right now are realizing that that is a substantial amount of traffic on where they're going, and they're trying to figure out what are they going to do about it. So I do believe that the walls have come down. They haven't come down from a marketing perspective, they haven't come down necessarily from a pricing perspective, but they have come down from a usage perspective, and we see a lot of traffic, substantial amounts going off net, simply using your mobile phone to access services, whether it's Yahoo, whether it's Google, whether it's MSN, whether it's other portals, or whether it's other content kinds of things.
All right. So if I'd like to close now. Thank you to all of the panelists for taking the time to do this. If anyone has any questions, just come on up. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to attend. Hope this was useful and informative. And thanks, and have a good rest of your day.